Welcome to the Rusted Garden Homestead. This is episode 3 in growing in flower boxes and containers. I'll give you a visual update on the flower boxes. The plants in there are doing really well. Today we're going to grow tomatoes and peppers in containers. I'm going to show you how to set that up. I'll go over what I already have growing. But we're going to start some peppers and we're going to start determinate variety tomatoes. And I'm going to talk about why the determinate varieties are great for small spaces and containers. And what does the word determinate mean? You can have determinate tomato types or you can have indeterminate tomato types, and technically you can have semi-determinate, but we'll just go with two, keep it simple: determinate and indeterminate. Let me give you an update on the flower boxes. We'll go take a look at those and then we'll start planting the peppers and tomatoes. So here's a tip: when you're growing in flower boxes, don't tuck one of them away like I did with these radishes. They were doing really well, but I forgot to water them, and it's been 7 good days of heat and your flower boxes will dry out pretty quickly. So when I press on this now, it's kind of rubbery and it leaves a little indentation. I'll water it, hopefully they come back, but they were doing really well, and you can grow radishes in flower boxes. Just don't forget to water them. Let me show you some that are doing better. So the real key to growing in containers and flower boxes is to make sure you keep the watering consistent. If they dry out just once, it messes up the plant system. So that's why we spend a lot of time really making a potting mix or buying a potting mix that's going to hold water. I will link a video that shows you how I make my potting mixes. You can use a potting mix in a bag, make sure it's called potting mix, or you can make your own. But look how well the radishes in here are doing. I'll even take one out. I mean, that's a beautiful radish, totally hydrated. Sometimes radishes split, that's perfectly normal, but you can grow beautiful radishes in a flower box. It's a second wave of lettuces, spinach, hopefully that makes it, but once the soil temp really gets to 50-60 degrees, these start to bolt, which means they put up flowers. So that's why your greens are considered cool weather crops. They like the cooler weather, but technically they like the cooler soil temperature. Some lettuces that have to be harvested in the next couple of days, been taking out and harvesting the spinach and arugula and other lettuces that was in there. And again, these flower boxes were made for $6 and they're doing a great job. All right, let's go back to planting and we'll start working with the tomatoes. So these are root pouch containers. I'm affiliated with them. We're currently sold out. We hope to have more in the next 2 weeks. But these are 16 liters or 5-gallon pots. Now they're not quite 5 US gallons. When you do the math, it really turns out to be 4.22 gallons. Just want to be clear about that. But these are perfect for our spearmint, lemon balm, I think that was peppermint, and oregano. These have been growing really well since the last video. They haven't been fed yet again. They were fed the first day with a water-soluble fertilizer, and there's granular in the soil, but about every 2 weeks, water-soluble fertilizer. Put some garlic into those. They should be up soon. Well, there's a little one popping up right there. And then here is more oregano, peppermint in the front, and then that's the thyme, oregano, and sage that we planted in the last video. Right in the back, in the 10-gallon containers, those are actually, I believe, 39 liters, and they measure out to be 10.22 gallons. We only sell 2 types. The smaller ones, which I call the number 5s, I like to use those for peppers, and then the number 10s in the back, which I use for tomatoes, really. The potatoes are doing really well. You just drop them down about 1/3 of the way into the soil, and you can see that they're doing nicely. Have a determinate tomato right back there. That's in the smaller pouch, and it can be done. If you're just getting started, I recommend growing determinate tomatoes in this 10-gallon pot. And it's just a little bit easier, because if you miss the watering, it's going to be a problem. But if you can keep up on the watering, you can certainly grow them in these smaller pots. So that's an experiment. That's a patio choice, determinate variety. Talk about that in a second. And then I have the super hots, a scorpion right there, Scotch bonnet, and then I have a sweet Hungarian wax pepper and a chocolate bell pepper, and then a super hot scorpion back there. 1 pepper plant per 5-gallon pot, and they will do really well. So let's plant up some peppers, some tomatoes, and I'll talk about setting up the soil. Now, a determinate variety tomato, I have 2 of those. This is a Bush Champion and a Mountain Majesty. We're going to again grow 1 in a smaller pot and then 1 in a larger pot, just to show that it can be done. But the key is just watering. If you don't keep them hydrated, you're going to have a problem. Determinate tomatoes get to a set height. They may get anywhere from 2 to 4 feet tall. They put out all their flowers almost at once, and then over a 2-week period they produce the tomatoes and then they die back, and you really have to replace them. They're perfect for containers because they really get to a set height, they mature quickly, they produce the fruit, and they don't get out of control. Indeterminate type tomatoes, for instance, can get 6, 7, 8, 9 feet tall, and you really need a larger container to thoroughly manage them well. So in your containers, grow determinate varieties, and I don't know if you'll be able to pick it up on there, but it says right on the yellow. See if I can tilt that a little bit. Anyway, it does say determinate. If you can't figure out what it is, you have to look it up online, and you just look it up by name, and it will tell you usually in a seed description, in a seed catalog description, what type of tomato it is. Peppers aren't typically indeterminate or determinate. It doesn't matter. We're going to just plant them in these pots. So, determinate variety tomatoes, set height, flower over a couple-week period, fruit pretty quickly. You get a big harvest over that 2-week period. Tomato dies off. Now the cool thing about them is you can plant them in the spring, and then you can do a second planting in the middle of the summer, and you can grow into the fall. So even though your determinate varieties die off after they produce, you can put in another wave of tomatoes, and that's perfect for hot areas where maybe like in Florida where it's way too hot in June and July. You can do determinates early in the spring, and then you can plant them again later in summer when it's hot but going into the cool season. And because they usually mature within 65 days after transplanting, you'll get plenty of tomatoes. So again, I'm going to link the video in the iCards and end screen on buying the different soil products at stores, and then also in that video I show you how I make my own potting mix. So the setup is pretty simple. You know, select your soil, whatever you want to use, and then fill this up halfway. I already did that, and once it's filled halfway, throw in 2 to 3 tablespoons of any granular fertilizer, organic granular fertilizer, into that. Mix it through and then fill it again, and then you're going to put another 2 or 3 tablespoons on top. That's for the 10-gallon size, and then just mix it through. It's a really loose soil. That's plenty of granular fertilizer. So it's 2 or 3 tablespoons in the bottom half, 2 or 3 tablespoons in the top. And planting the tomatoes, really, really simple. For the determinate varieties, you don't do any pruning. This is really important. You don't remove any of the suckers. You don't cut back any of the leaves, really. You just let it grow because it's going to flower and fruit all over a short period of time, and you don't want to remove any of the tomato plant that's going to produce flowers and fruits. For your determinate varieties, they grow out of control, so we often prune those back. We're going to plant just a little bit above the stem to about there. And then at the end we'll water this in with an organic water soluble. I use fish emulsion, and that's all you really have to do. So you're using a potting mix from the store, anyone is fine, or you're making your own. Now in the bigger 10 gallons we can also grow 2 peppers at once. I often grow 2 peppers in the same space. This is a great root system. These are banana peppers, nice sweet peppers, really prolific. And if you're a new gardener, definitely grow the banana peppers because they're pretty easy to grow, and they're really, really productive. Again, in the bottom half there'd be 2 to 3 tablespoons. In the top half, 2 to 3 tablespoons. Mix it in. This potting mix that I make really holds water. I can't stress enough the benefit of having a container mix that holds water. And for this you don't want to go down too far, just about to the soil surface level. Press it in, and these guys are good to go. For the smaller containers, we're going to just put 1 to 2 tablespoons halfway, 1 to 2 on the top, mix it in, and you can see how quickly we can really get these planted. And I'm going to put in a single pepper plant here. Again, if you can keep it watered, technically you could probably grow 2 peppers, but you don't want to miss out on watering. If the root system in the soil dries out just one time, it really damages the plant. That's it for the cubanelle. And then I already have 1 tomato. You know, I like to experiment. So again, in the smaller container, this is going to require, this has to be watered, some watering. It's going to require watering more often than these larger containers. But a trick you can use is you can get a plastic saucer, sit this in the plastic saucer, keep that filled, and the fabric container will absorb the water into there. So again, I'm almost out of fertilizer, but 1 to 2 tablespoons in the top, 1 to 2 in the bottom half, and just mix it in. And we're going to plant this. Oh, look at that. So this is garlic that I forgot that I started in this pot. That's why it's so important to label things. So we are going to put that garlic up here. Having the garlic in here and a tomato plant would just be way too much for that. So let's just put them in there, and let me look real quick for more garlic. Here's another one. All right, problem solved. So this is the best way, I think. This is the best way to grow tomato plants in containers, is to use the Determinate varieties. They are just great tomato plants for containers because they don't get out of control. When you grow the indeterminates that are getting to be 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet tall, they just get this massive root system, and it just requires a lot. If you want to grow the bigger tomatoes, we'll be doing that. But I now recommend, even though they can be grown in a container like this, really growing your bigger tomatoes in anywhere from 10 to 15 gallon containers. All right, let me get the water soluble fertilizer, and I'll talk about how you take care of the tomatoes and peppers. All right, so we're going to water them in with fish emulsion. Any water soluble fertilizer works well. And again, when the plants are small, maybe every 3 weeks. When they're larger, every 2 weeks. That's plenty of water soluble fertilizer to get them going. And maybe we'll come back in 2 or 3 weeks and give them some more. All right, and it's been about 2 or 3 weeks since we put the herbs in, so they're going to get a nice drink of water soluble fertilizer. Please subscribe. We'll be doing episode 4, and we'll talk about staking tomatoes. Determinate variety tomatoes, remember, get to be 3-4 feet tall. They don't always need staking, but I'll show you how you do it in containers, because you can't really put a stake in deep because you're in a container, but there's ways to support it. Thanks so much for watching, and please check out my seed shop at therustedgarden.com.